My fiancé gave me a soul-swapping jade pendant that let another woman steal my body, leaving me a wandering ghost. But he lived a long and happy life with the woman wearing my face. They used my title as princess to enjoy a lifetime of glory, having children and accumulating power. I drifted alone, a lost spirit with nowhere to go. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the moment he gave me the pendant. I accepted it with a smile, then turned around and gave it to a prostitute. This time, if I don't ruin them completely, I've lost. I never thought I would witness my own death. Princess Adeline, in a final rally before the end, was smiling as she recounted her blissful life. A loving husband, devoted children. Though her life was short, she had no regrets. I watched coldly as Julian, the man who was supposed to be my husband, and the children who looked so much like me, all cried in agony as she took her last breath. No one mentioned me, the real Adeline, the one who had everything stolen from her. The man before me was my husband, but not my husband. The children were born from my body, but they weren't my children. They were demons who had climbed to the top on my very life, the ones responsible for my demise. Perhaps it was the years of hatred finally boiling over, but I, a spirit, began to weep tears of blood. I screamed at Julian's sickeningly handsome face, my voice a piercing shriek. Julian, if I ever get the chance for revenge, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. My form started to turn transparent. I thought my time was up and closed my eyes, ready for whatever came next. But then, I heard that same nauseating voice again. Your Highness, this jade pendant is a family heirloom, meant for my future wife. Now that the Emperor has decreed our marriage, it is only fitting that I give it to you. Wait. Why was I hearing Julian's voice again? My palm felt a sudden coolness. I opened my eyes. Lying in my hand was a jade pendant, the soul-swapping jade. And before me stood a young, handsome Julian. I had returned to the moment he gave me the pendant. Your Highness? Seeing me dazed, Julian spoke again. He had a smile on his face, but a flicker of impatience crossed his eyes. I clutched the pendant tightly and forced a smile. Since it is a gift from you, Julian, I will wear it every day. Hearing this, a genuine, triumphant smile finally reached his eyes. The pendant represents my family's devotion to you, Your Highness. I hope you will keep it safe. I nodded and made an excuse to leave. His goal achieved, Julian didn't press me to stay. Back in my carriage, I threw the pendant into a corner. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed, startling my handmaiden, Clara. Clara was my personal attendant. In my last life, she stayed by the side of the imposter, Lily, and because she'd served me since childhood, she noticed something was wrong after I'd been possessed. For that, Lily had her tortured to death. Your Highness, did someone upset you? Clara was frantic, dabbing at my tears with a handkerchief. It's nothing. Let's return to the palace. And one more thing, I added. Find me someone on the verge of death. Someone low-born, with a complicated and wretched past. They wanted a perfect life? Why should they get to build their happiness on the ruins of mine? This time their family, their glory, their love, they would have none of it. I would make them beg for a life they couldn't have and a death they couldn't reach. I knew that the day I was possessed in my last life was just 10 days away. So I told my people to hurry and find me a suitable candidate. When they brought me a dying prostitute, they were clearly hesitant. Your Highness, this is Ruby from the brothel. The doctors say there's nothing more to be done for her. She only has a few days left. She has a foul disease. Please don't get too close, lest you dirty your eyes. They had searched the entire capital, and she was the only one who matched my description. The woman's face was caked in grime, but I could still see she had delicate features. I dismissed everyone. I knelt down in front of her, and explained why I had sought her out. I knew the pain of having your body stolen, so I wouldn't force this on anyone. Not even if I could promise her family endless riches. The woman listened without a flicker of emotion. She just opened her eyes, as lifeless as an old crone, and asked one thing. After you're done with this body, can you burn it to ash? Seeing my confusion, she gave a self-deprecating smile. So my heartless parents and brother can't sell my corpse into a ghost marriage. They want to control me even in the afterlife. They sold me to a brothel and ruined my life. I won't let them squeeze the marrow from my bones even in death. I refused to accept that. Her voice was raspy, but it was filled with a grinding hatred when she mentioned her family. I understood. Do you want revenge? I asked. At the word revenge, the woman seemed to summon her last ounce of strength and grabbed my arm. Truly? I nodded. I am a princess. Anything you desire, I will give you. It was the last thing I could do for her. When Julian gave me the pendant, he only said it was for the future matriarch of his house. In my last life, I was infatuated with him and overjoyed by the gesture, so I put it on immediately. I never imagined that just 10 days later, my soul would be ripped from my body. I watched as Julian held my body, whispering tenderly to the soul inside, calling her Lily. It turned out Julian had a childhood sweetheart, Lily, who had been frail and sickly all her life. When her health failed and doctors could do nothing, he listened to a dark sorcerer and came up with the plan to steal a new body for her. He worked tirelessly for her, personally selecting over 300 women. But they were all either from families not prominent enough or not beautiful enough, and he worried they wouldn't pass my scrutiny. After much thought, Julian decided to gamble big. He set his sights on me. I was the emperor and empress's only legitimate daughter, a princess of the highest rank, with stunning beauty. He knew my body would be more than worthy of his beloved Lily. And since we were already engaged, it was all perfectly legitimate in his mind. So he gave me the soul-swapping jade from the sorcerer, and performed a ritual to place Lily's soul into my body. Lily's own body died, and my soul was left without a vessel. My body had been stolen, but I wasn't meant to die, and no reaper came for my soul. So I became a wandering ghost, drifting day after day. All I could do was watch with burning hatred as that wretched pair lived a life of love and devotion, using my identity, my very life, to enjoy everything that should have been mine. In my last life, I was separated from my parents by death. To keep them from discovering the truth, Julian limited the impostor's contact with them. Aside from mandatory palace banquets, he rarely let her visit. My father and mother missed their daughter terribly, so Julian had the children she bore sent to the palace to keep the old couple company. They were children born from my womb, and they looked so much like me. My parents, loving the children for my sake, doted on them. Even after my father abdicated in favor of my brother, he still had my brother grant titles to the children. In that life, Princess Adeline lived a life of honor, her only tragedy being her early death at 30. Her husband, Julian, was a model of devotion, a man who loved one woman his entire life. Her son inherited his title, and her daughter was made a duchess just a year prior. She enjoyed everything Julian had stolen for her, becoming the object of envy for every noblewoman in the capital. I placed the soul-swapping jade next to Ruby and had her move to a safe place. Since Julian and Lily wanted something for nothing, they could bear the consequences of stealing someone else's body. I was dying to see how they would fare this time, going from a princess to a prostitute. Let's see if Julian and Lily could maintain their epic love story now. Because I was busy handling things with Ruby, I returned to the palace later than usual. I ran into my brother just as he was leaving our mother's chambers. Seeing me return so late, he put on a stern face and scolded me. "Why are you back so late? What kind of behavior is this?" I grew up trailing after my brother, so I knew he was all bark and no bite. He was raised to be the heir, and his tutors had trained him to be serious and composed. I used to complain to our parents that he was like a young, beardless version of his old tutor, and sometimes I felt he was far too strict with me. But after more than a decade hearing those familiar words again, tears streamed down my face before I could even process it. My brother's face instantly changed. He stood before me, completely flustered. "You, don't cry, brother. Brother wasn't yelling at you. I was just worried you'd get hurt." I wiped my tears and laughed. I know everything." Just then my father and mother came out from the hall. Seeing me cry, they thought my brother had bullied me and were about to scold him when I threw myself into their arms. Princesses, etiquette rules. To hell with all of it right now. I was just a daughter who had been away from her parents for too long. I just missed them so much. After a warm reunion with my family, I returned to my own residence, the Sunrise Palace. I didn't tell them what had happened today. I knew my father's temper if I told him, He'd probably have Julian dragged out and beheaded on the spot. But I didn't want him to die that easily. My palace was nearby. When I returned, Ivy was sitting in a chair, ordering the lower-ranking maids and eunuchs around. Clara and Ivy were my two first-class handmaidens. Clara was gentle, kind, and loyal, in charge of my daily life. Ivy was sharp and good at management, so she handled the affairs of the Sunrise Palace. Seeing me return, she hopped up from her chair and skipped over to me, looking me up and down. "Your Highness, how did your meeting with our future prince consort go today?" I didn't answer, just gave her a half-smile. "Guards," I said, my voice ringing out. "Drag Ivy out and beat her to death." When the words left my mouth, not just the palace staff, but even Clara froze. "Your Highness, you must be joking." Ivy finally reacted. The playful smirk on her face vanished, replaced by sheer terror. She dropped to her knees with a thud and scrambled forward to grab my leg, wailing, "Your Highness, Ivy has managed your palace affairs diligently. I don't know how I've offended you today." I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. "I had no idea you thought of yourself as my equal." Ivy collapsed on the floor. At my words, her face went deathly white. In my last life, even though Lily tried to minimize her palace visits, she still had to see the Emperor and Empress. Ivy had served me since childhood and knew all my preferences. Julian had tempted her with the position of his concubine to lure her into his scheme against me. He then had her tell him all my likes and dislikes to help Lily fool my parents. The title of Marquis was hereditary for 3 generations, and Julian was the third. He wanted to continue his family's legacy of glory, so he targeted me. Ivy and Julian worked together, tampering with my horse's saddle. This created the opportunity for Julian to save me at the riding grounds. He hid his relationship with Lily from me. He made me fall for him at first sight, which led to my father's decree of our engagement. His ambition was immense. He coveted my status, but his pride was wounded by having to grovel before me. His bruised ego made him dislike me even more. That's what led him to the idea of stealing my body. A wife who was obedient, yet of the highest status, that was what he truly wanted. It was all out in the open now. Ivy had to know that I knew everything. Her face was ashen. Her lips trembled as she crawled toward me, begging for mercy through her tears. She claimed Julian had seduced her, that it was all his fault. I knelt down, grabbing her chin to meet her gaze. "Julian will one day serve me. Even when we share a bed, it will be announced as, 'The Prince Consort attends Her Highness.' Without my permission, who gave him the nerve to even think of taking a concubine? Ivy, you grew up by my side. Are you really that short-sighted? You were fooled, that's true. But you also intended to harm me, and that's also true. For the sake of you growing up with me, I'll grant you the mercy of a clean death." In the end, Ivy chose a cup of poisoned wine. I watched with my own eyes as the life drained from her. "A message to all of you," I announced. "If a single word of what happened in the Sunrise Palace today gets out, what happened to Ivy will happen to you." Clara, now knowing the truth, trembled with rage and spat, "That traitor! How despicable! So, Your Highness, what's next?" Next, I had Ivy's body disposed of quietly and had someone forge a message to Julian in her handwriting. After my little demonstration, everyone in the Sunrise Palace was walking on eggshells, their lips sealed tight. A few days passed like this, and then Julian sent a message for Ivy. They were making their move. I followed the timeline in the message. On the designated day, I very cooperatively, and for no apparent reason, fainted. At the same time, the daughter of a minor 6th-rank official in the capital passed away from illness. After being treated by the royal physicians for a day and a night, I slowly woke up. Julian pushed past everyone to get to my bedside, more eager than anyone. He gripped my hand. "Your Highness, are you feeling unwell anywhere?" He looked at me with a mixture of joy and nervousness, all while glancing at the people behind him. My father, mother, and brother were also standing guard by my bed. My parents thought he was just worried about me, so they didn't comment on his breach of etiquette. I mimicked Lily's expression from my past life, staring at him for a long moment without saying a word. He frowned slightly. "What is it?" I spoke with a hint of a pout. "I want to eat 100 flour cake." Julian's pupils contracted. The main ingredient in 100-flower cake is peony, and Lily was allergic to peonies. I could feel the hand holding mine begin to tremble. Julian, are you cold? Snapping back to reality, Julian snatched his hand away. Realizing how extreme his reaction was, he quickly tried to explain. I was just overly concerned for your highness's well-being. My parents were too focused on me to pay him any mind, crowding around to ask me questions. But my brother watched him with a thoughtful expression. After another examination by the royal physician confirmed I was fine, they finally relaxed and left to attend to state affairs. Before he left, Julian tried to probe. A few days ago, the jade pendant I gave you, Your Highness, are you still wearing it? My mother was thinking of visiting the palace in a few days to pay her respects, and she would be so happy to see you wearing it. I pulled a jade pendant from under my pillow. It looked almost identical to the one Julian gave me, but the quality of the jade was different, and it lacked that sinister aura. Here it's… Oh dear. How did it become the one my brother gave me? I took out the pendant and examined it carefully. Then I looked at Julian, who was staring intently at the pendant in my hand, with an expression full of guilt. Julian, I forgot to tell you. Before you gave me your pendant, my brother also gave me one. The day you gave me yours, I ran into a beggar on my way back to the palace. I had my servants give her my brother's pendant, so she could sell it for money to see a doctor. It was getting dark, and I couldn't see clearly. I'm afraid I might have mistaken your pendant for my brother's. After hearing my explanation, Julian knew exactly what had happened. His forehead throbbed with rage, but he couldn't accuse me of giving away his precious pendant to a beggar. Instead, he could only stand up and reprimand me for disrespecting my brother. Your Highness, how could you give away a gift from the crown prince to a common beggar? If you truly wanted to save a life, you could have given her a hairpin or a handkerchief. Those could have been sold for money. I looked utterly wounded by his scolding, but before I could speak, my brother cut in. It's just an object. I wouldn't care if Adeline threw it away. But you, Sir Julian, you have overstepped. Julian quickly knelt to beg for forgiveness. That pendant was a royal gift. I was only afraid that, since it was a royal gift, I will have my father bestow another one upon your house. Adeline is tired. You may leave now. My brother cut Julian off, dismissing him from the palace. No matter how unwilling he was, Julian had no choice but to leave. He had been so confident, he hadn't even noticed Ivy was gone. After Julian left, my brother sat down by my bed. What exactly are you up to? He was right. He had never given me a jade pendant. I had one made overnight and simply used his name. Meeting my brother's searching gaze, I took a deep breath. I laid out Julian's entire conspiracy for him. My brother's hands clenched so tightly his knuckles cracked. Julian, how dare he? Don't be afraid, sister. I'll have father issue a decree right now. We'll strip his family of their title and seize their assets. A wave of warmth washed over me. I knew he'd react this way, so I quickly grabbed his sleeve. But wouldn't that be letting him off too easy? Brother, let me handle this myself. I can do it. If he dared to use such a dark curse on me, then I must make him pay the price. I explained my plan to my brother and asked him to keep it from our parents for now. To prevent Julian from getting suspicious, my brother even went to our father and requested a new jade pendant be gifted to Julian's family. It was presented as an apology for my mistake. Soon, all the nobles in the capital knew that not only was Princess Adeline deeply infatuated with Julian, but even the emperor and the crown prince held him in high regard. Meanwhile, Julian was living in a bubble of false glory, basking in the praise of others, all while frantically searching the capital for the beggar I'd described. After all, that was his childhood sweetheart he was looking for. I heard that when Lily woke up in Ruby's body, she couldn't believe her new reality. She spent her days either screaming that she was Princess Adeline, or that she was the daughter of an official. She became obsessed with finding Julian, claiming she was the beloved of the heir to the house. It was only after I became a ghost in my last life that I learned the soul-swapping jade wasn't foolproof. While it could swap souls if the original owner's will was strong enough, they could still fight their way back into their own body. To cut off any chance of my return, Julian had lied, saying I was sick. He'd had my parents send a drop of their own blood, which he mixed with cinnabar for Lily to wear. The blood of my own kin protected the woman who stole my body and completely severed my chance of survival. But my fate was incompatible with Lily's. She couldn't handle my destiny, and she still had to bear the consequences of the dark magic, ultimately dying young anyway. This time, however, Ruby, the body she'd stolen, had already lost the will to live. She was likely already in a better place, never wanting to look upon this filthy world again. With Lily's original body dead, and no one to fight her for control of Ruby's, it was perfect for my purposes, regardless of whether their fates were compatible. I sneered at the report from my spies and tossed the paper into a candle flame. Is one true love, you say? Well then, how could I possibly stand in the way of two lovers reuniting? I had my people remove their watch on Lily and leak Julian's whereabouts to her. The next day, news that the prince consort-to-be was seen getting into a public tussle with a prostitute spread through the capital like wildfire. That day, Clara and I waited on the road where I knew Julian would be. Sure enough, just as he appeared, I saw a grimy, disheveled woman run toward him from a distance. She threw herself at him, crying hysterically, "Julian, my love. It's me, Lily." Julian's face changed. Seeing her miserable state, a flash of pity crossed his eyes. He was about to help her up when a group of people shouted from afar. "She's a prostitute who ran away from the House of Spring Breezes. She's got the pox, my lord. Don't let her filth touch you." The man's voice was so loud that half the street could hear him. From a distance, I saw Julian's face twist for a second, a look of disgust in his eyes. The hand he had extended to help Lily froze in midair, caught between helping and not helping. Finally, gritting his teeth, he reached out one hand, pulled Lily to her feet, and then subtly stepped back. Lily noticed his movement and broke down completely. "You're disgusted by me? You're disgusted by me, aren't you? Julian, my love, I'm your Lily. I'm the daughter of the censor. No, I'm the princess, I'm Princess Adeline." Hearing her shouts, Julian snapped, "Who is this madwoman, daring to use the princess's title?" Lily stared at him in disbelief, but before she could scream again, the brothel madam who had come to catch her slapped her hard across the face. "I spent a fortune trying to cure your disease, you worthless slut. And you dare to run away? I'll beat you to death." Then a crowd of people swarmed her, kicking and punching. Julian couldn't bear to watch and spoke up, stopping them. The crowd of onlookers started praising him. "She's still a human life after all. This lord is a kind-hearted man. He'll surely be rewarded." The show was over. I had Clara carry a box of snacks and approached them, pretending it was a chance encounter. I feigned surprise and, suppressing my nausea, moved closer to him affectionately. "Julian, what are you doing here?" Julian hadn't expected to see me. He tried his best to hide the panic in his eyes. "I was just passing by and saw these people beating this woman. I couldn't just stand by. It's dirty here, you should go home." He wanted me gone fast, before I heard any more of Lily's mad ramblings. But instead, I praised him, my gaze falling on Lily. "Julian, you truly are a kind soul." By now Lily had to know who I was. She lay on the ground, staring at me and Julian with venom in her eyes. Her eyes were bloodshot as she lunged at me, but my guards blocked her. "It was you. You stole my title. You stole everything from me. I'm Adeline. I'm supposed to be the princess." With me present, Julian couldn't just order her to be silenced. He could only watch as Lily spewed her insanity. It seemed Julian was so confident in his plan that he'd filled Lily's head with dreams of their perfect life together, driving her to this obsessive, near-psychotic state. I just smiled faintly. What a madwoman. Julian, who had been sweating bullets, immediately latched onto my words. "Such ravings shouldn't be allowed to foul your highness's ears." After returning to the palace, I had my people spread an exaggerated version of Julian's encounter all over the city. I heard that Lily, with nothing left to lose, went to the Marquis's estate and threw a fit, screaming that she and Julian had pledged their love to each other, and that he had to take responsibility for her. Julian, in response, had her tied up and thrown back into the brothel. He then publicly declared that he had never set foot in the House of Spring Breezes, and that he was the victim of slander. But the fact that he was seen grappling with a prostitute on the street was undeniable. His denials were just a desperate attempt at damage control. Soon, petitions denouncing Julian piled up on my father's desk like snowflakes. My father reprimanded him for tarnishing the royal family's name, and I refused to see him. Desperate, he sent another message to Ivy. Besides a few sour complaints, the message was mostly asking about how I felt about him now. After all, with the soul-swapping Jade lost, his only option was to go back to the original plan of becoming my husband. I had my people reply for him. Tell him the princess is very hurt, but she still trusts him and hopes he can quell the current rumors. I was going to push him into a corner. I wanted to see what he would choose, his beloved or his future. I soon had my answer. The assassins he sent to kill Lily were all captured by my personal guards. She had spent the last few weeks being beaten by the brothel madam, or abused by Ruby's family. Now, after surviving an assassination attempt, she was huddled in a corner, her eyes vacant, so terrified she'd lost control of her bladder. I had one of the assassins left alive. In front of Lily, he confessed that Julian was the one who had sent them. I looked at her with a mocking smile, each word a poison dart. The boy you cherish so much not only used dark magic to condemn you to a life as a prostitute for his own ambition, but now he wants you dead. He'll go on to marry, have children, and climb to the highest ranks, while you're damned to an eternity in hell. Lily, can you really accept that? She couldn't. And so in that bloody dark room, she wept, her body shaking with a hatred so deep she ground her teeth. I won't let him get away with this. I will never let him get away with this. Perfect. That was exactly what I wanted. I had Lily hidden away and sent a message to Julian that she was dead. Your Highness, why not just let them kill Lily and be done with it? Clara asked, indignant on my behalf. Doing it myself is no fun. Julian's birthday is coming up, isn't it? I'm going to give him a special gift. Unable to get an audience with me for days, Julian was frantic. He even tried to arrange a meeting with Ivy. I had my brother hold back the petitions against Julian, and had Ivy reply that I was planning to ask my father to elevate his family's marquis title to that of a duke. I also had my brother invite Julian to the palace for his birthday celebration. Everyone said it was a sign that the royal family approved of Julian. With his immediate worries gone and no long-term concerns, he was on cloud nine, walking everywhere with his head held high like a proud peacock. On the day of his birthday banquet, I used my name to invite every major noble in the capital to the palace. Julian, dressed in a magnificent indigo brocade robe, wore a coy smile. Your Highness, such a grand display, I'm afraid I'm not worthy. I raised a glass to him. Of course you are. After all, I thought I built this stage just for you. Without the main character, how could the play go on? As the guest of honor, Julian was soon surrounded by people offering congratulations. But in a dim corner, a woman in a maid's uniform was quietly approaching him. As everyone was lost in conversation, the woman pulled out a pair of scissors and, with chilling precision, stabbed him right between the legs. The hall fell silent. Then came the terrified screams. The people who had just been fawning over Julian now scrambled away from him. Julian himself tried to fight back, but when he raised his hand, he found he had no strength. All he could do was writhe on the floor in agony. I had put something in the wine I'd toasted him with. And the woman, of course, was Lily, whom I had smuggled into the palace. Watching her continue to stab him in a frenzy, I finally raised my hand, and the Imperial Guard slowly, deliberately, moved in to restrain her. By then, the hem of Julian's indigo robe was soaked crimson. He looked at me, one last, desperate plea on his lips. Doctor, he mouthed. I made out the word and sneered, casually toying with the cracked soul-swapping Jade in my hand. I watched him build his tower, I watched him feast his guests, and I watched his tower collapse. There is no greater satisfaction in this world. I dismissed everyone and summoned my parents. Julian's parents also came, having heard the news. When they learned their son was now no different from a eunuch, they wept and begged my father to launch a full investigation. Julian had fainted from the pain, but I ordered the physicians to treat him without any anesthetic. It wasn't long before the pain jolted him awake. Even so, he gritted his teeth and tried to defend himself. It was Lily. It was all that bitch's fault. Your Highness, she bewitched me with dark magic. You have to believe me. Lily, however, offered no defense. She just wore a bloodthirsty, insane smile. As she was dragged away, she screamed, to find one true love, to never be apart. My parents were completely bewildered. I exchanged a look with my brother, then had the dark sorcerer dragged in. The sorcerer was only 30, but his body was already stooped and his hair was white. Those who use dark magic like the soul-swapping Jade to harm others must pay with 50 years of their own life. When he was found, he was strangely calm, saying only that Julian's grandfather had once saved his life. A life debt, he said, must be repaid with a life. He regretted nothing. I threw the soul-swapping Jade at him like a piece of trash. A life debt? Your life debt? Why did I have to be the one to pay the price for it? The thought that my tragic past life was all because of some life debt that had nothing to do with me made my chest burn with a scalding rage. Decades of lonely, wandering nights at this moment. I couldn't hear anything else. I could no longer suppress the hatred inside me. I drew the sword from the nearest guard and plunged it into the sorcerer's heart. Only when his body fell did I feel like I could breathe again. Julian's family trembled in fear. My parents looked at me with deep concern. My brother approached me, his voice gentle. Adeline, it's okay. No one can ever hurt you again. I dropped the sword and knelt before my parents. Word by word, I told them everything about Julian's conspiracy, and everything I had suffered in my past life. When I got to the part about my own blood being used to protect Lily, my mother held me in her arms and cried until she was breathless. My father immediately ordered Julian's house stripped of its title and assets, and all his direct relatives exiled. My brother, who had followed the rules of court for 20 years, who was always the model of propriety, personally hauled the feigning unconscious Julian to his feet. He punched him, again and again, until Julian's face was a bloody, pulpy mess. I didn't let my father kill Julian and Lily right away. Instead, I had them locked in the same dungeon cell. Lily was on the brink of death, and Julian was now a broken man. The childhood sweethearts, their innocent love, was shattered by reality. I ordered the jailers to torture them daily, enough to cause pain, but not enough to kill. They grew to despise the sight of each other. Even while grievously injured themselves, they would spend their days spewing the most vile, hateful insults at one another. A year later, Lily died. Her eyes were wide open, still glaring in Julian's direction. When I went to the dungeon to see him, his exposed skin was covered in dried, blackened blood. Since his injury, he was incontinent, and the smell was unbearable. He was like a pig in a sty. He no longer recognized me. I heard that after spending a night with a corpse, Julian's mind snapped. He would alternate between crying and laughing in his cell. He'd babble about being a prince consort, a duke, about having sons and daughters, a harem of wives and concubines. Julian had remembered his past life. From his mad ramblings, I pieced together that after the princess died in that life, Julian had put on a show of being heartbroken. He refused all marriage proposals, claiming he was mourning his deceased wife. He lived like that for 5 years, raising their 2 children, a performance that even moved my parents. They personally arranged a new marriage for him. Julian, citing filial piety, reluctantly accepted. From then on, he had beautiful wives and concubines, a perfect reputation, and a celebrated name. He was truly the ultimate winner. But in this life he would spend his days in a dark, sunless prison. I was never a kind person, so I didn't order the torture to stop. What goes around comes around. He had to pay the price. On the day Ruby's body was cremated, a certain family in the capital's suburbs vanished without a trace. I placed Ruby's ashes before her mother and brothers and forced them to kowtow and beg forgiveness from the daughter they had tormented her entire life. Finally, with Ruby's ashes as my witness, I had them all strangled. I scattered Ruby's ashes to the wind. I then established shelters across the land specifically for women and children, naming them Ruby's Haven. They provided a sanctuary for countless girls like Ruby. The wheels of history roll forward, and so must we. The end.